Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Learning Conversations. I'm Aurora, and today I want to share something very personal with you. I want to tell you the story of how I dramatically improved my English listening skills in just 30 days using a specific method that completely transformed my ability to understand native English speakers. This isn't just theory or advice I've heard from others. This is my own personal experience, and I'm going to share with you exactly what I did, day by day, so you can use the same method to improve your own listening skills. Let me start by telling you where I was 31 days before this transformation began. I had been studying English for several years, and I thought my listening skills were pretty good. I could understand my English teachers perfectly, I could follow educational podcasts designed for language learners, and I felt confident in my abilities. But then I decided to challenge myself by watching an American TV series without subtitles, and I was shocked at how little I actually understood. The actors spoke so quickly, they used slang I had never heard, and they interrupted each other constantly. I felt completely lost and frustrated. That frustration became my motivation. I decided to conduct an experiment on myself. I gave myself exactly 30 days to see how much I could improve my listening skills using intensive, focused practice. I documented everything I did, measured my progress, and tracked what worked and what didn't. The results surprised even me, and today I want to share that journey with you. But first, let me explain why I think listening is often the most challenging skill for English learners. When you're reading, you can take your time, look up unknown words, and reread sentences until you understand them. When you're writing, you can plan your thoughts, use a dictionary, and edit your work. But listening happens in real time. You can't pause native speakers in real conversations, and if you miss something, it's gone forever. Also, listening requires your brain to process multiple elements simultaneously: individual sounds, word boundaries, sentence stress, intonation, and meaning, all while the speaker continues talking. It's like trying to solve a puzzle while someone keeps adding new pieces. No wonder so many learners find it overwhelming. Now, let me tell you about my 30-day listening challenge. I want to be completely transparent about what I did, because I know many of you are looking for practical, actionable advice that you can implement immediately. Day one was about establishing my baseline and creating my plan. I chose 3 different types of listening materials to work with throughout the challenge. First, I selected one American TV series, Friends, because I had heard it was good for learning English, and the episodes were only about 20 minutes long. Second, I chose an English news podcast because I wanted to improve my ability to understand more formal, informative content. Third, I picked YouTube videos by native English speakers discussing topics I was interested in, like travel and cooking. I also established my measurement system. Each day, I would rate my comprehension on a scale of 1 to 10 for each type of content. 1 meant I understood almost nothing. 5 meant I understood the general idea but missed many details. And 10 meant I understood everything clearly. On day one, my scores were Friends, 4 out of 10, news podcast, 3 out of 10, YouTube videos, 6 out of 10. My daily routine was this. I would spend 1 hour each morning on listening practice, divided into 3 20-minute sessions. But here's the key. I didn't just listen passively. I used a very specific technique that made all the difference. For each 20-minute session, I would listen to the same content 3 times with 3 different focuses. The first time, I listened without any aids or subtitles, just trying to get the general feeling and topic. I didn't worry about understanding everything. I just let the English wash over me and tried to catch whatever I could. The second time, I listened with English subtitles, making connections between the sounds I was hearing and the written words I was seeing. The third time, I listened again without subtitles, and I was always amazed at how much more I could understand after seeing the written version. Days 2 through 5 were challenging. My brain felt tired after each session, and sometimes I felt discouraged because my comprehension scores weren't improving much yet. I was still scoring around 4 for Friends, 3 for the podcast, and 6 for YouTube. But I had committed to 30 days, so I pushed through these difficult early days. Something interesting happened on day 6. I was watching Friends, and suddenly I realized I was laughing at jokes I hadn't understood just 5 days earlier. My comprehension score was still only 5, but I was starting to recognize speech patterns and common expressions. Phrases like, "what's up?" and "no way" were becoming automatic for me. Days 7 through 10 brought the first real breakthrough. I noticed that my brain was starting to predict what characters were going to say based on context. In sitcoms, there are many predictable situations and responses. And once I started recognizing these patterns, my comprehension improved significantly. My friend's score jumped to 6 out of 10. Around day 12, I made an important adjustment to my method. I realized that I was spending too much mental energy trying to understand every single word, which was actually making me miss the overall meaning. So I started practicing what I call gist listening, focusing on the main ideas rather than every detail. This change was revolutionary for my progress. By day 15, halfway through my challenge, my scores were Friends, 7 out of 10, News Podcast, 5 out of 10, YouTube videos, 8 out of 10. I was thrilled with this progress, but the most exciting changes were still to come. Days 16 through 20 brought an unexpected development. I started hearing English in my dreams. I would wake up remembering conversations in English, and sometimes I would catch myself thinking in English during the day. This told me that my brain was processing English even when I wasn't consciously studying. On day 18, I had what I can only describe as a breakthrough moment. I was listening to a news podcast, and suddenly everything clicked. The reporter was discussing a political situation, and I realized I was understanding not just the words, but the nuances, the implications, and even the reporter's attitude toward the topic. It was like someone had turned up the clarity on my English comprehension. Days 21 through 25 were about consolidating my gains and pushing into more challenging territory. I started listening to content that was slightly above my level, more complex TV dramas, longer podcast episodes, and videos about topics I wasn't already familiar with. This was harder, but I could feel my skills stretching and growing. One thing I noticed during these later days was that my listening stamina had improved dramatically. In the beginning, I felt mentally exhausted after 20 minutes of focused listening. By day 25, I could listen to English content for an hour or more without feeling tired. The final 5 days of my challenge were about testing my skills in real-world situations. I joined English conversation groups online, participated in video calls with native speakers, and challenged myself to understand English in noisy, imperfect conditions, like you encounter in real life. On day 30, I measured my final scores: Friends, 9 out of 10, News Podcast, 8 out of 10, YouTube videos, 9 out of 10. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. More importantly, I felt confident and relaxed when listening to English. I wasn't struggling to keep up anymore. Instead, I was enjoying the content and even noticing details about pronunciation and regional accents that I had never heard before. Now, let me share with you the specific techniques that made this dramatic improvement possible. The first technique was consistent daily practice. I never skipped a day, even when I was tired or busy. Consistency was more important than intensity. An hour every day was more effective than 7 hours once a week. The second technique was the 3-listen method I mentioned earlier. This systematic approach helped my brain make connections between sounds and meaning in a very efficient way. Many students only listen once to content, but repetition with different focuses was the key to rapid improvement. The third technique was choosing content at the right level. Material that was too easy didn't challenge me enough, while material that was too difficult was frustrating and discouraging. I aimed for content where I could understand about 60 to 70% on first listen, then work to improve my comprehension through repetition. The fourth technique was active engagement rather than passive listening. I took notes, paused to think about what I had heard, and sometimes even talked back to the content, practicing responses to questions or comments the speakers made. The fifth technique was variety within structure. While I maintained the same daily routine, I exposed myself to different accents, topics, and speaking styles. This prevented my ears from becoming too accustomed to only one type of English. Let me also tell you about the mistakes I made during this challenge, because learning from failures is just as important as celebrating successes. In the first week, I tried to listen to content that was too difficult for my level. I chose a complex documentary about science, and I understood almost nothing. This was discouraging and didn't help my skills improve. I learned to choose content that challenged me without overwhelming me. Another mistake I made was getting too focused on individual words I didn't understand. I would pause constantly to look up words, which interrupted the flow and prevented me from developing natural listening skills. I learned to let unknown words pass and focus on overall meaning. I also initially chose content that didn't interest me personally, thinking that I should focus on serious or educational material. But I discovered that I learned much faster when I was genuinely engaged and interested in the content. Entertainment and enjoyment actually enhanced my learning, they didn't distract from it. One of the most important insights from this challenge was understanding the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive. Sound waves hit your ears and your brain processes them automatically. Listening is active. It requires focus, attention, and mental effort. Many students think they can improve listening skills by having English playing in the background while they do other activities. But this passive exposure has limited benefits. Real improvement comes from focused, active listening practice. I also learned about the importance of emotional state in listening comprehension. When I was relaxed and confident, I understood much more than when I was anxious or frustrated. This taught me to create positive, comfortable learning environments and to be patient with myself during difficult moments. Another crucial discovery was the power of prediction in listening comprehension. Good listeners don't just process what they hear, they predict what they're about to hear based on context, patterns, and their knowledge of the topic. As my prediction skills improved, my overall comprehension improved dramatically. Let me share some specific signs that told me my listening skills were improving. First, I stopped hearing English as a stream of individual words and started hearing phrases and ideas. Second, I began to recognize when speakers were being sarcastic, joking, or expressing emotions, not just the literal content of their words. Third, I started noticing different accents and regional variations in English. Fourth, I could follow conversations even when there were multiple speakers or background noise. Now I want to give you a practical action plan based on my experience, adapted for different levels of English learners. If you're a beginner, start with very simple content, like children's shows, basic news reports, or educational videos designed for English learners. Spend 15 minutes daily using the 3-listen method I described. Focus on getting used to English sounds and rhythm rather than understanding every word. If you're at an intermediate level, choose content like sitcoms, simple podcasts, or YouTube videos about your hobbies. Spend 30 minutes daily on focused listening practice. Work on understanding main ideas and common expressions, and start practicing prediction skills by trying to guess what speakers will say next. If you're at an advanced level, challenge yourself with news programs, documentaries, or movies without subtitles. Spend 45 minutes to an hour on listening practice. Focus on understanding nuances, cultural references, and implied meanings. For all levels, I recommend keeping a listening journal. Every day, write down new expressions you learned, note your comprehension improvements, and record any insights about your learning process. This documentation will motivate you and help you track your progress. I also want to address the question of how long it takes to see results. Based on my experience and what I've observed in my students, most people start noticing improvements within the first week of focused practice. Significant improvements typically become apparent after 2 to 3 weeks. Major breakthroughs often happen around the 4 to 6 week mark. However, listening skill development isn't linear. You'll have good days and challenging days. Some days you'll feel like you understand everything, and other days you'll feel like you've forgotten everything you learned. This is completely normal and part of the learning process. One final point I want to emphasize is the importance of celebrating small victories. During my 30-day challenge, I celebrated every moment of improved understanding, every new expression I recognized, and every conversation I could follow more easily than before. These celebrations kept me motivated and made the challenging days easier to handle. The 30-day intensive listening challenge changed my relationship with English permanently. Not only did my comprehension skills improve dramatically, but I also developed confidence and enjoyment in listening to English content. I no longer felt anxious when watching English movies or joining English conversations. Instead, I felt curious and engaged. Today, more than a year after completing this challenge, my listening skills continue to benefit from the foundation I built during those 30 days. I can enjoy English podcasts during my commute, follow complex movie plots without subtitles, and participate confidently in professional meetings conducted in English. And I want to encourage you to try your own listening challenge. You don't have to commit to 30 days immediately. Even a 7-day intensive focus on listening can produce noticeable improvements. The key is consistency, appropriate content selection, and active engagement rather than passive exposure. Remember that listening comprehension is a skill that improves with practice, just like playing a musical instrument or learning to drive. Every hour you spend on focused listening practice is building neural pathways in your brain that will serve you for the rest of your English speaking life. Thank you for letting me share this personal journey with you. I hope my experience inspires you to challenge yourself and gives you confidence that dramatic listening improvements are possible in a relatively short time with the right approach and consistent effort. Until next time, this is Aurora from English Learning Conversations. Start your own listening challenge today. Be patient with the process. And remember that every moment of focused practice is moving you closer to the listening skills you want to develop. Your ears are more capable than you think. You just need to train them properly. Goodbye, everyone.